My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, and this review will have spoilers, so there's your warning. But I hate it. Hate it when movies do this. Like, you've got John Wick Chapter 2, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. Like, for some reason, this is the one and only movie in this franchise to get a subtitle. And then John Wick Chapter 4. I like consistency. And just either they all get subtitles or none of them do. Same thing with the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. There's How to Train Your Dragon, How to Train Your Dragon 2, appropriate title, and then How to Train Your Dragon The Hidden World. Just very frustrating. But let's talk about the actual movie now. And this was one of my biggest disappointments of 2019. I loved the first 25 minutes, but I really didn't care for the rest of the movie. And this movie still feels like a backtrack. Like, the second movie ends and John Wick is marked as excommunicated. Everybody is out to get John Wick. Perfect cliffhanger. And this movie delivers for the first 25 minutes, but then it spends the next hour trying to get out of that cliffhanger. And I just find that to be very disappointing. Like, I really like John Wick Chapter 4, but I would have been okay if they fully committed to that plot and this was the final John Wick movie. I would have been good with that. I also didn't like the Halle Berry plot. I didn't like the desert plot. And I didn't like the Russia plot. And I still don't. Like, there was a good 45 minutes of this movie that I could just do without. Like, in the first movie, it's a simple revenge story with some cool world building to help elevate it. But I feel like in this movie, it focuses too much on the world building, where it loses what really worked for the original movie. Like, I just feel like this movie could have been very straightforward. But I am not reviewing the movie I would have made. I am reviewing the way this movie exists. And even though those issues still exist, I actually liked this movie much more on a rewatch. And I think it's because it does still feel like a proper continuation of John Wick Chapter 2. And I'll explain. John Wick, revenge story. John Wick Chapter 2, this guy has a marker, so John Wick has to do him a favor, but the guy backstabs John Wick. Not the most interesting story, but it's about how the system is rigged up against John Wick. This movie is about how the system is just rigged against everybody. Everybody is a sucker. Like, in the second movie, you think Ian McShane is the big boss, and nope, he's got big bosses, and they've got big bosses, and it's this giant system that just screws everyone over. So, yes, it backtracks out of the cliffhanger, but it is still a proper continuation of the second movie. And I think those elements are actually done very well. And the movie is so well directed by Chad Stilisky. Like, I love it when a movie just looks incredible and holy shit does this movie ever. Like, this movie is just stunning. The colors pop, there's a nice atmosphere, it's incredibly well shot, the sound is great. Like, from a technical point of view, this movie is just outstanding. And I think this movie, out of the first three, has the best action. Like I've said a few times already that the John Wick action just isn't my favorite. But here, I just feel like they use the environments more, and there's little things about each fight that really helps them to stand out. Like the library fight where he kills the guy with a book is just awesome. The scene where John Wick is fighting a bunch of guys and there's a whole lot of knives, that's a great scene. The scene where John Wick is fighting some guys in a barn and he's using the horses as weapons, that's a terrific moment. The motorcycle samurai chase scene is awesome, and I love the entire final chunk of this movie because it just looks so beautiful, and I love how John Wick has to use a shotgun, and I always complain about how he's overpowered, but here everybody else feels overpowered, so there's more stakes to it. So the action is much better in this movie, and I'll be honest, I still don't really care for the Halle Berry dog fight scene. Just maybe I was just too checked out at that point, but it felt very generic. And I also like how this movie can have a cheeky sense of humor. I like how shit, I just totally lost my train of thought. Never mind, got it back. I like how the villains show respect, they show honor. It just allows them to stand out more than just generic characters. And the cast does a really good job. Keanu Reeves carries this movie incredibly well. He just plays this character perfectly. Still not a great performance, but he's good here. Ian McShane is fantastic. He is so effortlessly funny and charming and likable, and he just has so much personality. Lance Reddick, I thought, did a really great job as well. Lawrence Fishburne, I still think is unnecessary, but he does a perfectly fine job. Halle Berry does a pretty decent job, even though I think her character is unnecessary. Mark Dacascos does a pretty decent job. He's menacing enough. Asia Kate Dillon does a pretty decent job. Angelica Houston, she was just so unneeded and she doesn't really stand out. And Randall Duke Kim, Oogway himself, he plays a doctor in the very beginning of this movie, and in just minimal screen time, he really stood out to me. So the cast is good, the movie is very well made, it looks incredible, it has some great action set pieces, and thematically, it's a proper continuation of John Wick Chapter 2. The backtracking can be frustrating. The world building does go a little too overboard here, and the movie loses me for a good 40 minutes of it. But I thought this was much better on a rewatch, and maybe expectations have something to do with that. So I'm giving John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum a 7 out of 10. Okay, have you seen John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, Stay tuned for more videos soon. And Gavin,